Welcome back to the Church of Love. Today we're celebrating the beginning of spring and the moon and being in Aries. I am Aries, so that's my time, so I'm happy about that. We're a couple days late because I've been sick, but it's all good. Let's get started. Loving spirits be with us. Ancestors be with us. Mother be with us. Father be with us. I give offerings of water. I give offerings of food. I give offerings of alcohol. I give offerings of flower and fruit and candy and incense. Spring, it is a time of rebirth. All around it's turning green. They've woken up the sleeping earth. Now the sun is longer seen. Here in California and in a lot of places, it's been a long winter. I live in a desert, and we're not used to it being this cold. If you live in other parts of the country, you probably laugh at how cold we complain about, but it gets it's been down to freezing every day for months. And that's very unusual where we live. There's been a lot of snow up in the mountains that I live right next to. A lot of friends that have had difficult times. People have died. The winter has been so harsh around here. So we're definitely happy to see spring coming. And on that note, talking about spring, I want to talk about journeys, beginnings. I see the Temple of Love as a different way of looking at spirituality, a different way of looking at mental health that is earth-based. And a lot of this is going to be a journey for me as well as for you. So let's talk about journeys, new beginnings, as in a couple days into spring, a couple days into the real new year. You might have heard of Joseph Campbell. His work is considered to be a little outdated nowadays, but he did do something that is still important and still relevant, is he basically created the field of comparative mythology, looking at different myths from around the world and drawing comparisons. Now, there are people today who say that you shouldn't do that. Each culture is a bubble that belongs only into itself, but that's just simply not true, especially in a world where we are more enmeshed than ever before, multicultural, international. We are living with people from different cultures and religions, ethnicities all around us. And we should be learning from each other. There's a difference between appropriation and learning with respect. And there's a lot to be learned by comparing. I've done that a lot in my life as well. I've studied a lot of different religions, a lot of different mythologies. And one of the things that Joseph Campbell pointed out was the hero's journey. You'll see the hero's journey in just about any story. There's different story formats, but especially in our culture, the hero's journey is a very popular one. You could talk about the Lord of the Rings. You could talk about old stories like the Chronicles of Narnia, even Winnie the Pooh, Christopher Robin going out into the 100-acre woods and coming back. Anytime a main character, a hero, is going on a long journey, usually perilous, and returning home, hopefully with some wisdom, that's the hero's journey. It goes are the most ancient stories, the Iliad, the Odyssey, as far back as we can go. And many, many stories, you could take your pick. But the main thing here about the hero's journey is you leave the comfort and safety of home. You go out and you have adventure, and adventure means danger. And you come home hopefully having gained something. How does that fit into mental health? Well, it's a journey. In order to make the decision to heal, you're going to have to leave the safety of the ideas that you have right now. The ideas that are in your own mind and your ideas of how the world works. You're going to have to go onto a journey inside yourself. You're going to face monsters that are part of you. Some people call it shadow work. You're going to have adventures, and they're not always going to be fun. Healing can be painful. Healing can be very painful. I was in a motorcycle accident last year, and I busted my right knee, which now I have matching busted knees. I busted my left knee years ago, so now I have matching broken knees. And when I was in the military, I fractured my back, so I'm in pain a lot, all the time actually. And a couple days, I'm sure, you've seen or you're familiar with road rash. It's not fun, and it's especially not fun when it's on your own body. And to just see the skin completely gone on both my knees. Luckily, that's the only part of my body that was injured. I had full gear on except for motorcycle pants. I just had jeans on, so the rest of me was fine, but my knees were messed up. And immediately after the accident, you start to swelling. It's part of the process as the fluids start rushing to the area that's damaged. Well, a couple days afterwards, I needed to start moving my knee so it didn't get locked up. The amount of willpower it took to move my knee when it was in such tremendous amount of pain. I mean, I screamed. My nesting partner, man, they nursed me for weeks. And then you go to physical therapy and you have to move your knee. You have to, you have to do squats. Man, it's the last thing you want to do. When you hurt something, you don't want to move it. You just want it to, the old joke where you go to the doctor and the doctor says, tell the doctor, hey, it hurts when I do this. And the doctor says, well, don't do that. Well, that's not the way you heal. You heal by moving. And now I've got most of my mobility back in my knee, which is, considering my age and my previous injuries, is pretty great. And that's thanks to my physical therapists and my partners, and honestly, a lot of willpower to keep doing it, to keep doing things that hurt over and over and over and over again until it stops hurting. That's often what healing really looks like. We've been kind of blinded by what healing really looks like in America because we have such an artificial health system where you go to the doctor and most of the time they hand you a pill, you go home and take the pill, and that's it. But that's often not healing. A lot of times those pills are helping us. I'm on pills right now. I'm just getting over bronchitis. So I'm not telling you not to take pills, believe me. But what is real healing? Real healing is changing changing the things that you do to be healthier. And when you're talking about physical health, of course, that's diet, exercise, getting out and getting some sun. We all know the drill. But when you're talking about spiritual and mental health, we're talking about facing your demons, processing your trauma. And processing your trauma doesn't mean just talking about it over and over again. It means getting in there and removing the hurt. Several years ago, I was going to a therapist, and for years and years and years, I've been in therapy for a long time, off and on. And for years, we were focusing on therapy mostly on the depression. But I got a new therapist, and he said, you know what, we really need to focus on your PTSD. And in order to heal from your PTSD, in order to improve it, because PTSD, it is healable. A lot of these things that people tell you can't heal from, you can. It's not a guarantee, but you can. You're not going to heal but just by taking pills. And believe me, I take pills for my PTSD, but I'm also doing the work to hopefully heal from it one day. So the therapist told me, in order to heal from it, we're going to have to start processing your trauma. This is about 7 years ago, we had this conversation. And I said, what do you mean processing trauma? He said, we have to talk about it, go in depth. And the goal is to be able to think about your trauma, talk about your trauma, without having the emotional elevation that you would when you normally talk about it or think about it. Let me tell you, I've got a lot of trauma, and it goes back my entire life. And that's the last thing that I wanted to do, was face things that I have been blocking out of my mind that I have not thought about since I was a child. So I didn't go back. For 2 years, I avoided that. I just stopped going to therapy. Until right before COVID hit, a relative of mine who's also a witch, she called me up out of the blue, and we don't know each other well. And she said, actually she didn't even have my number. She called my sister, and she said, you need to tell Tim to start doing the work, or he's going to end up just like his parents. Well, I'm sure most of you understand when you say you don't want to end up just like your parents. They're the reason why I'm traumatized in the first place, right? So I had to start that journey. And then COVID hit. And that was a journey for all of us, right? And a lot of people dealt with COVID in one of two ways. They either sat down and reflected, and a lot of people did a lot of work, self-improvement work, whether it's learning how to bake bread or learning a new hobby or working on yourself. And a lot of other people just buried themselves in any kind of distraction that they could just to get through it. You got to do what you got to do. But let me tell you something, it's not always fun to turn around and look at yourself, to deal with those things. It could be very painful. And why am I telling you this? I'm not trying to scare you off. I'm trying to give you a consent warning. A consent to go on a journey that may not always be fun, but there's going to be wonderful moments. And at the end of it, you're going to start becoming the person that you've always wanted to be. I never thought I could be happy. When I started working on myself, my only goal was to not be suicidal. My only goal was to function, to keep getting up and going to work because I sure as hell did not want to. My only goal was to be able to keep being a parent, to keep being a partner, to just keep on keeping on and not give up. I never thought that I could be happy. I didn't even think, with all the stuff that I've been through, that that was a reasonable goal. I never thought that I would be normal, and that's definitely not a reasonable goal. I'm not knocking going to therapy. I still go to therapy. But talking about your problems in traditional talk therapy, where you just go in and talk about your problems and talk about your problems and talk about your problems, there is limited things that that can do. The ultimate reality is that the American healthcare system is not trying to heal you. It's trying to get you to function. As long as you could be a cog in the machine and go to work and pay your bills and not cause too many problems, they think they've done their job. But I wanted to heal. I wanted what everybody wants, to be happy. And I only found that through spirituality. You don't have to do what I did. You don't have to do what I do. There's many paths in spirituality. There's many ways. But I feel like I've been giving introductory talks about what the Temple of Love is. And so now we're going to start teaching. We're going to start giving you different ways to do things. We're going to talk about meditation, mindfulness, interacting with the spirits, interacting with your ancestors, doing ceremony, doing rituals. And you might think to yourself, how is this mental health? Trust me, it is. It very much is. I often say mental health is spiritual health. The practice of psychology, the word psyche, originally meant soul. But as Western culture became more and more materialistic, we removed that and focused on the mind because we want to pretend like the soul doesn't exist. If you're only treating part of the problem, you're only going to get partial results. We are spiritual beings. We are having a spiritual existence. That doesn't mean that I don't believe in science. I very much do. It does not mean that I don't believe in medicine. I very much do. But we need to add to that the part that's been missing for several hundred years, is the soul. If your soul has been hurt, then only spirituality is going to help you heal. I always thought that Gandalf was a little bit of an asshole when he strode up to the Hobbit and banged on the door and said to Frodo, "Hey, come on. We're going to go on an adventure." Frodo kind of got shanghaied a little bit. All the doors popped up and he was harassed and harried, and then next thing you know, he's out the door. I always thought that Gandalf could have been a little bit like, "Hey, this is going to be a little dangerous. This is not always going to be fun. But at the end of the adventure, it's very much going to be worth it." So I don't want to do what Gandalf did. I want to be fair to you. In spring, a time of new beginnings, I want you to join me on this new beginning of looking into yourself to heal your soul and therefore heal your mind. It's a wonderful journey and it's very much worth it. But it's not always going to be fun. I love you, and blessed be.